Hey everybody, welcome to today's Zoom class about Google Data Studio and Facebook ads. We're kind of just giving time for everybody to come in. And today we want to, here we go, trying something new in the class today. Almost has nothing to do with the topic, but I just wanted to get people involved. So we're doing a poll, and it has to do with the Super Bowl, the sporting event I can't wait. And so I'm gonna make my vote in the poll. Oh, host panelists can't vote. But anyways, just signing up for fun. We want to see who do you think is gonna win the Super Bowl, and then also just a little bit for me. I was surprised at how many people from outside Omaha came last time, and so just let us know if you're from in Omaha or from outside Omaha. And then on top of the poll too, something I'm always really curious about is just kind of what do you guys want to learn from today's class? And so in the chat, at any time you guys can ask questions. But one thing I kind of want to just open up with is if there's anything you really want to learn today, be sure to just go and type it in the chat. And since we're still a little bit new to this, we don't know exactly what everybody wants, what everybody doesn't want to know. And so, anyways, just basically the more you guys chat, the more you guys ask questions, the better the overall outcome is going to be for everybody, and also just a little bit more fun for myself. And so I'm just going to leave the poll up and then kind of revisit this at halftime of the course. And speaking of halftime of the course, that seems like a good opportunity to just kind of go over today's agenda. And of course, the name of the class today, Google Data Studio and Facebook ads, building cool Facebook ads dashboards. And so just like the title says, really the topic of today's course is about this thing, Google Data Studio, which we'll get more into that. Google Data Studio, that's just kind of turns boring looking spreadsheets into cool looking reports. And since that's sort of not super duper interesting in itself, kind of each week what we've been doing in this class is having a different data source. And so first week was Google Analytics, second week Google Ads. This week is Facebook ads. And so even if don't do Facebook ads and just want to learn how Google Data Studio works, you guys are going to learn so much. And also kind of my own personal goal is I run Facebook ads. And so I just want to like almost give away all my secrets today, and just when it comes to Facebook ads. And sort of how we're going to do this is first half of the class is slides, second half is going to be me going live and just actually setting up a dashboard so you guys can see every single little step, and then also just a little bit of my own techniques. And so you don't mind me pointing it out. Oh, Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, okay. I call them the chefs sometimes of the Kansas City Chiefs to Marla Cohen. Anyways, agenda today, we're going to start with our intro overview slide. That's what we're looking at now. Then we're getting to, is Facebook becoming pay to play? This is really just kind of an opportunity for me to say why I think all this stuff we're going over is important, and just get a little bit more context before we get into the actual reporting. Okay, after that, we're going to just do, what is Google Data Studio? How does that even work? Kind of like base knowledge. After we just go over the basics, we're going to number 4 is, I call it getting Google Ads talking to Data Studio. Talking to is not a technical term, but that's kind of how I encourage people to think about it. We want to get everything talking to each other. We'll get a little bit more into this on slide 4. 5, Facebook ad mistakes to avoid. Honestly, if you learn nothing else in this class, slide number 5 could make the whole price of admission worth it. And anyways, after that, we're just going to get to what I call the fun part, which is me actually going up and setting up these dashboards. And anyways, the final two notes here I have are just kind of for myself. First one is what should work versus what does work. And kind of what I mean by this is whenever you do any sort of online ad or offline ad, it's always kind of like what you think is going to work. And then after you do run these advertisements and you can kind of look back through the data, look back through these dashboards, oftentimes you'll find out like what you thought was going to work really isn't what did actually work. And just this in itself is so interesting to me. And kind of just the act of making dashboards and making reports, it's interesting in itself, but like once you see how this stuff actually kind of seeps into the real world, that's where it just gets so much more fascinating. Okay, and the second note I have here is spend more here, spend less there. And that's kind of build on top of my last thing. Basically, once you know kind of what does work, oftentimes we'll go through and say, hey, okay, basically now that we know what doesn't work, let's spend less there. And now if we are fortunate enough to have something that really works well, double down and scale up. Okay, cool. One other thing is I saw someone, Brian asked, is trying to find a way to analyze his finances and if curious if Google Data Studio can help. And short answer is yes. Kind of, I want to just I'm going to save this question, Brian, for when I'm actually kind of playing around later. And like there's a specific part, but I'm just making a note of that, Brian. I'm going to get to this later. And anyways, I want to get to the fun part. So let's get through these slides. And okay, Facebook, is it going pay to play is the question. And hint, my answer is yes. But kind of even before I get to that, I want to just take a step back and start with this chart. And what we're looking at, it's called Facebook revenue growth. And it's charting money Facebook has made from their own ads. And basically it ends in the second part of 2019 and it only goes back to the start of 2015. So this last 5 years. And anyways, the trend here is really clear that Facebook has basically increased their ad revenue 5-fold in the last 5 years. And Facebook came out in about 2005, I would say. And so there was basically back then they had no really money from advertising. And suddenly over the last 5 years, it's just become this major cash producing machine for Facebook. And even before I get into kind of the details of what it does and how it works, I just wanted to start with this slide. And one idea I want to kind of just suggest is now that Facebook started making all this money from advertising revenue, it's never going back to how it was in the beginning. And kind of what I mean in the beginning, how it worked is specifically if you wanted to get a message out back when it first started, all you had to do was go on your wall, go on whatever, type in your thing. And usually most of your friends would see it. Most of the people in your group would see it. Anyways, the trend now, what's happening kind of for better or for worse is now if you want all those same people to see your ad, you kind of have to boost it a little bit. And that's what I mean, pay to play. And so I want to show you this chart to like the money Facebook is making is no joke. And they're not going back to the way things were before. And so a lot of people complain about this, but I say kind of like, don't hate the game. Just, well, whatever. Just think of it as a game and know that if you really want to succeed in the future, it's going to take a little bit of a different skill set than in the past. the skill set we're going to be talking about today. Anyways, taking a step back from Facebook ads and just talking about what is Google Data Studio, the topic of this class. And how I explain it is basically it's just a platform that turns data into customizable dashboards and reports. Basically, go from a spreadsheet to a kind of attractive looking report like this. And so this is supposed to be a little GIF where it kind of goes and shows how, a single report you can filter and just look at traffic from a single device, meaning, oh, I only want to look at traffic from phones versus traffic from phones and computers. And anyways, on today's lesson, I want to go a little bit faster over the slides. And instead of kind of explaining everything right now, I think it'll make a lot more sense once you can just see all the stuff in action. But anyways, competing data visualizers. And so these are direct competitors of Data Studio. And the most common one is Tableau. Number two, most common I've been hearing is Microsoft BI or Microsoft Business Intelligence. And just basically think of these as the exact same as Data Studio. In my opinion, why I prefer Data Studio is because number one, it's free. Number two, it's part of the G Suite, meaning it's just owned by Google. And so if you're familiar with how to do a Google Doc and how to share it with other people and how to make text boxes and all that stuff, Google Data Studio is built on that kind of exact same platform. And so if you're familiar with other Google programs like Google Sheets, Google Drive, Google Calendar, you're gonna already kind of have a big heads up when we get into this. And then I have a pro, it's easy to use, but also as a con, one way Data Studio is worse than Tableau and Microsoft Business Intelligence is it's just kind of less powerful. There's less stuff. In Tableau and Microsoft BI, you can get super duper complicated when it comes to the graphs. One thing I'll say about Data Studio is it's really more for like connecting to Google's other platforms is kind of how it was built on. And what I mean is the most common data sources are one, there's Google Analytics. This shows data from websites. There's data from Google Ads. And so it's really good for talking with other Google things. And it's not as good, for example, with something like Facebook. Facebook ads takes a little bit more work, and that's what we're going to be talking about later. And then anyways, my last note I have here is the principles learned in this class also apply to other data visualizers. And what I'm trying to say here is that basically a lot of the stuff we're going to learn in Data Studio also applies to Tableau and Microsoft BI. It's just that those things are totally like organized differently. But once you kind of get it with Data Studio, you're really going to have a huge heads up on any of the other competitors. Oh, good morning from the Philippines. Thank you. That's incredible. It's like almost 7 o'clock here in Omaha. Yeah, I'm interested to check that poll out in a second. Okay, Data Studio setup. And so in this last slide, we just went over what is Data Studio. So we said it's okay, turns data into reports. In this slide, I just want to show you kind of how the backend works of Data Studio, how you even can get the data into Data Studio in the first place. And so for today's lesson, we're going to be ultimately trying to get data from our Facebook ads down to our Google Data Studio report. And just a few little notes here. Obviously, it's not directly connecting. And so I sort of have two different options of how we can do this. One option has this little red line, which means that you have to do some manual work here. And what this means is how I basically used to do all my reporting is I would go into Facebook ads, open it up, copy a bunch of data, then I would paste it into my spreadsheet. And then I've always had my spreadsheets connected to Data Studio just because I've been trying to become good at this for a while. Or the other way we can connect it is I use a program called Supermetrics, but the basic idea is just create an automatic connection from Facebook right to Google Data Studio. And Google Data Studio doesn't really like to play nice when it comes to Facebook. And so they don't want to make it super duper easy for people who advertise on Facebook to use Data Studio. And so that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today. Just, I'm going to kind of go like a little bit faster over this part in the actual demonstration, but just if anything else, I want you guys to have the idea of we can kind of connect Facebook manually to Data Studio, or we can connect it automatically. And then something else, I want to go back to a question I had from Brian earlier. And he was saying he wants to look at his own finances through Data Studio. And so what I would suggest to someone like that is they don't make it super duper easy to connect to your like bank account. But what you could do, Brian, is if you're familiar with Google Sheets, you can kind of just copy. So I said earlier, I used to copy data from Facebook ads, paste it into these Excel sheets. And then once it's in the Excel sheet, it's really easy to get going with the reports. So if you wanted to try that, what I would suggest is your key is to be getting your data into these programs called Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. And then once it's in there, it'll be super duper easy to connect it to Google Data Studio. But basically, my point is here would be, oftentimes this is sort of the missing step a lot of people don't really realize. And so, okay, anybody's goal is we want to get Facebook connected to Data Studio. I'm going backwards here. Just a second. Get everything connected. And then, okay, Facebook ad mistakes to avoid. And so this is kind of assuming we already have everything set up, everything talking to each other. And also, I'm going to be hitting on these 2 mistakes later on in the course, but I wanted to just kind of take a minute to spell all this out. And so one thing you guys will hear when it comes to Facebook ads or any type of online ads is a phrase called A/B testing. And really what that means is a lot of times when people do Facebook ads, they'll actually kind of have 4 different ads running at the same time. And how the whole online marketing works is you can get a lot more data and you can kind of get an idea of actually like what should work versus like what is actually working. And that's the whole promise of like, oh, you can see what actually is working. But a lot of times when people run their reports, it'll just turn out, hey, you guys don't actually like, you've kind of made some mistakes earlier on. And when you look at your report, everything's not all going to be there. And again, this might sound being kind of weird at first, but I'm going to hit on these same 2 mistakes later on in the report. But basically, there's one that's I call the expensive mistake and one that is the frustrating mistake. And so even before I get to the expensive mistake, the kind of symptom, this could be like a sign that you might have made this mistake. I would call it the symptom is people are going to look through their dashboard. They're going to be super excited to see kind of like what actually led to sales. And they're not going to have that data. And specifically, I'm going to use this word called conversions. And conversions, it's kind of an arbitrary word. It can mean something totally different in different businesses. But I just want to introduce the idea that one of the most expensive mistakes people can make is not having conversions set up in Facebook ads. And this might not make sense here, but I just want to introduce the idea later on. And when I say conversions, it's not just website sales, but a lot of companies, like the one we're going to be looking at here in a second, they don't sell anything on their website. Instead, the whole goal of their website is trying to get people to usually fill out a form. And then once they fill out the form, they'll either call that person or email that person and basically try to sell them something, but it's going to be something where the sale happens offline. And so conversions, it's usually sales or what I call new leads. But it really could be anything such as video views, like downloads, basically whatever the goal of your business is, you want to make sure Facebook can kind of see exactly where these conversions are. And in this slide before, I was talking about getting things talking to each other. Another way to say this expensive mistake is Facebook sometimes, if it's not talking to all your different tools, it's gonna cost some money. And again, more on this later. And then mistake number 2, I call this frustrating mistakes. The idea is we want to test kind of 5 ads against each other. I've done this one like a few times. It's drove me crazy. But what happens is I want to like test 5 ads, kind of give maybe like $100 to each one, see which actually gets the most sales at the end. Because once you kind of know that, it'd be, hey, kind of onto something. Now we learned something new. But anyways, what's happened to me is I'll have 5 ads, but for some reason, like one ad will get 90% of the impressions. And so it's basically the idea is to have like a fair playing field. And then oftentimes I've looked back through my reports and seeing, oh man, I didn't give this, it like wasn't a fair playing field at all. If one got like 10 times as many views as everything else. And the solution to this one is setting up one ad per ad set. This is not going to make any sense without context. That's why we're going to get to it in the fun part. And I'm just going to keep going here. Okay, overview of the fun part. What we're about to do, I'm starting with this, I call it a template. And a template is basically just an empty report. And then I'm going to connect this template to a real life Facebook ads account. And I'm going to kind of go in and fix every single part of it, get it up and running perfectly. But more importantly, I just want you guys to see the process that you're going to have to go through and just kind of get a heads up of some of these obstacles that are going to be in your way. So once you do face them, you'll know what it is and you'll kind of know at least the general direction where to go. And okay, 30-second click targeter ad. Click targeter, click targeter, this is the name of my business. And basically, if you want someone to help you set up Facebook ads, Google Data Studio reports, please contact me. I'll put my contact information here. But just only thing I want to say is I do actually do this for people. So if you like what you see in the fun part, please give me a holler. And right now, what I'm trying to do is exit this slideshow. There we go. Ali, how do I see the polling? Here we go. I'm not quite sure how to see the poll results. Can someone type in the chat what the results of the poll are? Sorry, I can't hear. I can't see it.
Okay. I got it pulled up here.
Okay, I'll just type that in the chat. I'm gonna keep on going here.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see what I had. Okay, so this is our empty template we're going to start with. And then one thing that's cool about today's course is we're going to be using a real life Facebook ads account. And I want to just give these guys a very quick shout out. And this is, by the way, a real life business in Omaha. It's called Cafe Postale. And just basically a little background about these guys is they wanted to open a cafe, and the grand opening of the cafe coincided with the coronavirus outbreak. And so obviously sort of like the worst time ever to open a cafe. And anyways, one thing these guys have been doing is kind of had to like rethink everything. You know, we can't really do a cafe now. And so one thing they've started doing is renting out their space as a wedding venue. Okay. And so their Facebook ads we're going to go over are more to promote this place, Cafe Postale, as a wedding venue. So if anyone is getting married, let me tell you what, we got a good place down here, downtown Omaha, close to Old Market. Let's see. They had one post where a bunch of cool pictures of the space. I just want to do this to give you guys an idea of what the data we're actually looking at today is about. And so just, you know, if you want to get married in a cool space downtown, here's the cafe. Here's where you hang out, you know, different kind of people. It's really awesome, just an awesome place. And so, you know, a lot of people have had to totally rethink their whole business. And hopefully you guys can learn something from this. Wow, Buccaneers have more than the Chiefs. That's crazy. Okay, that kind of makes sense because I assumed all the Omaha people would vote for Kansas City Chiefs. But, you know, if there's more people from outside Omaha, they're probably going for the Buccaneers. I'm a little bit split on that personally. My favorite player is Indomikong Suh. Any Husker fans will know who I'm talking about. But anyways, digress. Let's get back into the data studio. I just want to close some of my tabs out here. And so I guess what I'm about to do is kind of connect this Facebook ads to this report, right? And so I'm starting here with the empty report. And by the way, guys, I'm going to copy this link, paste it in the chat again. If you'd want to connect your own data to this dashboard, go ahead. There's a link to it. And I would suggest kind of just watch me first, and so you can get an idea of once you do it yourself. But anyways, right now I'm going to click this button called View. And so what I just did is I went from edit mode to view mode. See, now that button changed. It's saying, do you want to go back to edit mode? But let's do a quick overview of this template. Of course, it says Facebook ads data. So this is our data source. The date range, it's going to be about the last month. Up top here, we have these things called data filters. And so one example is for Facebook ads, you can advertise on people's phones or computers. And so if you just wanted to look at ads from phones, you can break it down here. If you just want to look at a certain ad, you can just look at that one. One other thing that's really, really cool about Data Studio is you can automatically go through here and change the date. So you can compare your new ads to the old ads in the past. Basically, hey, like if maybe this new ad, we think it's going to be great, but then it doesn't actually as good as the original ads. You know, that's really, really interesting. Anyways, this top part is just a little quick overview of the account. We're going to see how much people spent, how many impressions, that's how many times someone actually saw the ad. clicks. This is really important. How many times ad got clicked on. And then finally, goal completions. This is how success is measured for the account. Earlier, I brought up the idea of conversions, and a lot of people don't have their conversions set up right on Facebook. This is specifically what I'm talking about, and I'll get more into this in a bit. But basically, first thing we want to do is just get a big, quick overview. We're only going to look at kind of 6 key metrics, but then we'll break down these same 6 numbers and we'll see, okay, within Facebook, were they advertising on Facebook or were they advertising on Instagram? And so one thing a lot of people don't even realize about Facebook ads is that they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp. And so basically, if you learn how to do Facebook ads, you're also going to know how to do advertising on Instagram and how to do it on WhatsApp. And after that, it's just kind of 2 charts. One is charting ad spend and one is charting goal completions. And I like to look at this just because you'd assume when you spend the ads will sort of match up to when you get your goals. But that's not always the case. And then finally, we have these 2 tables at the bottom. This is going to show us the best ad that these guys created. Then we're going to look at the best audience that the cafe advertised to. And I'll get more into audiences in a second. That's where Facebook ads is super duper powerful. It really gives people that advertise the option to get very targeted with their ads. And that's kind of gotten them in trouble a little bit. But more on this later. I just want to plant the seed that the audiences, in my opinion, are kind of the most important part when it comes to your ads. But anyways, okay, we got this template and now we want to connect our data to it. And so the first thing we have to do is make a copy of the report. And so what a copy, this means we're basically going to be looking at this exact same final product, but instead of Facebook ads, I'm going to go up here and I think this is the right one. By the way, for me to do this, I'm using a program called Supermetrics. And so that's how we get this here. I'm going to go copy report. Supermetrics, by the way, if anyone's interested, it's not free, but they have a pretty cheap rate for anyone who just wants to do like one data source. And I'll bring that up here in a second, but kind of what's happening right now is Data Studio is kind of doing a lot of internal calculations, trying to recreate this whole report with the new data. And so this is always pretty exciting to see what happens. It says they've updated some errors. Okay. One other note I want to just, this is kind of a good time, is depending on what data source you use, Google Ad or Google Data Studio will be faster and slower. And so it's very, very fast when it comes to Google Ads, Google Analytics, anything else in Google. But since we're connecting to Facebook ads, it's kind of outside of that Google stratosphere. It can take just a little bit slower. Only point I'm trying to get across is the speed of Data Studio. Biggest factor is what data you're looking at. And also this kind of just gives me a thought. One of the ways it works, so anyways, we were successfully got some data in here. It doesn't, things all don't look right. This is what we're going to have to go in and edit. But kind of how it works is, so we got Facebook ads, we connected that to Supermetrics. And now within Data Studio here, I had 2 different sections. One's the report, but then there's also this thing called the data source. Okay. And so when I go through and edit this report that I'm about to do, I'm actually editing this data source, and it's kind of, they basically just make a copy of your own Facebook ads data and it lives in Data Studio. That's a technique to just make the reports load faster. But I just bring that up because I'm going to have to edit some of this stuff. I'm going to be changing some of the data, right? But the point I'm trying to get across is we're not changing data at this level or at this middle level. We're changing Google Data Studio's own kind of Excel file of the Facebook ads. And so a lot of people don't really realize that Data Studio also can kind of hold your data for you. It didn't always do that, but it's something new. And anyways, here's our template. We don't want to do that. Okay, and here is our dashboard. And so one other thing I'm going to show you guys here is notice on the template, everything is pretty clean. Total clicks, cost per click, new conversations, cost per new conversation. Whereas in this dashboard here, it says uniques click all, cost per unique click. And then we can't even read it because it's running off the screen. And so I just kind of, before I show you the solutions to all these different problems, I just want to give a quick overview of kind of what we're going to be fixing. And basically right now, all the data in here is accurate. It just doesn't look very good. And kind of, if I had to show this to the client, they would have so many questions, which is obviously not what we want. And anyways, let's get right into this. So the whole goal here is, since this data doesn't look right, I'm going to have to kind of go a step backwards and make some changes. And what I'm trying to say is, for me to get my data to look right at this report level, taking a step back to the data source here. And so I'm just doing a little quick overview. I'm going to click on this button. It says manage added data sources. And Cafe Postale, this is our data source. I'm going to edit here in a second. But kind of the first thing, I'm just going to go through this kind of one by one. And then at the end, we can kind of go in and actually go through these guys' performance, which is interesting in itself. But okay, amount spent, this should actually be a dollar amount, but instead it's just a number. And so also down here, amount spent is a number. And so what I'm going to do is go into this data source and make one change, and it's going to kind of fix all those numbers, transform all the amount spent into a dollar amount. And basically the reason Facebook doesn't just have everything in dollars, us Americans, that we're so, of course, focused on the dollars, but this is worldwide. And so whatever your currency is, like, I know we have some people from the Philippines, they would go down to the Philippine peso, but we're doing the American dollar today. And so what I just did is, this page is called data mapping. And basically what it is, it's kind of saying like, okay, here's everything we're getting from Facebook. And then here's kind of our interpretation of what it's supposed to mean. And so this is loading for a second, but on that amount spent, it says, hey, it really should have been a dollar amount, but it wasn't totally sure. So it just had it as a regular number. And so what I'm doing is going in and basically fixing this map, making sure basically all the currencies are in the currency. And then some of those slides where it was like really overflowing, we're going to fix all that. So it, by the way, are you guys seeing my whole screen? Or are you just seeing the one desktop? I think I have an issue here. Okay, sorry. I think I might have just been sharing my one screen, which would have been confusing for you guys since I was going back and forth during two Data Studio reports. Anyways, got that figured out. Amount spent, we just changed that to US dollars. So I'm going to go and check and see if it worked. And nice. That's a dollar amount. That's a dollar amount. This data mapping, like, if you guys can just figure this out, it's basically going to give you the power to really work with any different data source. And so one of the points there is, even if I was talking about earlier, maybe getting some financial data, putting in your spreadsheet, and getting your spreadsheet data to this final report. Like, a lot of times the people's spreadsheet won't be totally perfect. And so they'll have to go in and kind of change some things in Data Studio. But good thing Data Studio does give you all that power. And so, yeah, so sorry, I got a chat that says, can you re-demonstrate because we didn't have access to your view? That was my fault. What part do you want to see again? And actually here, I'm gonna, for the amount spent, there's a lot of other numbers we got to change. And so for unique clicks, and I don't like how Facebook kind of names things. So I want to rename unique clicks. I call this total clicks. And so what I'm going to have to do to change unique click to total click. And by the way, this is kind of exactly what I just did with the other one in case anyone couldn't see. But I have to go to resources, manage data sources. So we're kind of editing our data source, edit. And we want to change unique clicks to total clicks. So I just type in unique click, where Facebook has like 700 different total things it keeps track of. And so unique click, I want to change this to total clicks. And then this other one, cost per unique click, that was too long. So I'm changing this cost per total click. Only reason I'm naming it, you guys, is just because if it's shorter, it just looks better in these reports. And then the number type, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to have to change the number type of that cost per click. It's just going to be in a number amount. We want it actually to be in a dollar amount. And so it takes a little bit time to load. I wish I would have made that change earlier. Also, one other thing, and this is kind of a good time to bring it in, but one of the skills, when you guys become expert Data Studio masters, you're going to be doing a lot of Zoom calls, and you're showing these reports through Zoom. And sometimes it just goes slow like it did right there. And so one of the most important skills is if you can kind of, by the way, I'm changing this to dollars. But anyways, one of the most important skills is the ability to sort of just delay a little bit while your report loads. And my advice on that is, the more you can kind of know what the next thing you're going to do is, the better you'll be able to delay. So right there, I knew I was trying to change unique clicks to total clicks. And so even though it went kind of slow, I was able to tell everyone what I was doing. Anyways, okay, total clicks. Okay, new messaging conversations. I'm going to get to this in a second. But I want to just take a step back again. And so one of the things I didn't do is really customize this. And so right now it still looks pretty basic. It says your account. I want to change this to Cafe Postale. Basically the point here is you guys can change this report I shared with everyone to make it look like it's your company. So Cafe Postale, this is my logo. I want to have their logo on there. I'm just going to type in Cafe Postale in Google. Go to Google Images. And let's see if their logo is up here somewhere. Here we go. Knew it was on here because I did it earlier. I'm just kind of copied that image, saved it, and then I'm going into, I just clicked on this image and it said, what's the file of this image? I'm going to change that click targeter logo to images. And so I didn't really name that, but there we go. We got the cool looking stamp for a cafe. And I'm going to kind of move this over a little bit. But we got Cafe Postale. I don't really want it to. And then the other thing I always do here is, now that we've actually have real data in here, let's go Cafe Postale data. We'll go actually like this. Facebook ads data from Cafe Postale. And so when I view it, hey, it looks pretty, it's branded as if it's all Cafe Postale. You can't really tell that I did anything. And then, okay, the other thing about this account is it looks like they've been advertising for longer than we're looking at. And so I'm gonna go and just change this date so we're not only looking at the last 30 days, but really to get an idea of kind of what's been going on in general. And whenever I get a new account, the first thing I always do is just kind of go back to the start of time. And so let's just do like 2 years back. I happen to know when these guys created it, but if I don't know, I'll go like way further back. And then you can look at these charts and you can kind of see, oh, we don't even need to go back that far. But good morning. Dude, by the way, someone I noticed in the chat said they wanted a certificate. I love that idea, and I never really thought of that until the chats. And so that's something I definitely want to incorporate moving forward. Wow, anyways, okay, our data studio loaded again. And so we went back way too far. And so it looks like they started basically in November of 2020. And so I knew that they started in November of 2020. I just wanted you guys to kind of see that process I go through of setting the date range way too far back, looking at the charts to see, hey, when did this actually start? And then kind of closing the gap so we get the entire history of this ad account. And it's going to take a second to load, but already let's just look at some of these numbers, because now things are starting to get interesting. We're getting a little bit of idea of performance. So it says they've spent $550 on their ads and got 6 conversations at a rate of like $92 per conversation. And how this works, by the way, in some Facebook ads, kind of how most people do it, this is going to be one of your good hints for tonight. Kind of most people, when they do their Facebook ads, they'll say, click on my ad, and they send people to their website. But kind of the new trend in Facebook ads is they have what it's called lead ads or messaging ads. And instead of sending people to your website, what it does is it'll just send people right into a Facebook ads messaging conversation with you. And so when this says conversations, it means that of the 550 they've spent, they've got 6 conversations. And this is interesting. Okay, so it looks like we got this ad spend here. We got looks like they had 2 separate times they tried to advertise, but they only got conversations in this one part. And so what this is telling me is I don't think the goal of this account is actually conversations. In fact, I know it's not because I'm a little bit more familiar with his account. But the whole reason I'm saying this and what I'm trying to get to is basically there's a lot of different goal completions. Um, Conversations is not the goal for this ad. And what I'm going to do, I know it's this thing called leads. And on Facebook leads. A lead ad, I just talked about the conversation ad. It tries to get people to basically start a message with you. The other way is you can just go and instead of having a whole conversation, it'll just be like a little, just like a little survey. And the people kind of can fill in. It's basically, hey, if you're interested in this wedding space, just give us your name and email. And then one of the people will call you back. And so we know the goal is on Facebook leads. And so now I want to know the cost of the on Facebook leads. Wait a second. By the way, what I'm doing right here is like Facebook ads has like so many different numbers and metrics you can look through. So since I know exactly what I'm looking for, I'm just typing it in. And here we go, cost per Facebook lead. And so, wow, interesting. So before it looked like it was $66 per a new conversation, which is not bad. But now it's saying that these guys were actually like, they spent $550. They got 96 leads. That averages out to about $6 per lead. And so I'm going to change this late in a second here because it's not the right number. But what I'm getting at is a lot of times when you look through these things, it's like you're going to have to edit the template to sort of reflect exactly the business case of that specific Facebook ad account, because obviously everyone's advertising something different. And so now that we know we're not looking at conversations, we're looking at leads, what I'm going to do is go down here and change this from new conversations to on Facebook leads. And hopefully it'll give us like a little bit better, hopefully it'll just kind of match up a little bit more with this spend. What I always look for is whenever you're spending, it should match up kind of with your goal completions. And this is interesting. Okay, wow. So this second part, it definitely, we're spending stuff and getting some results. But in this first part, they spent money but didn't get any Facebook leads. And I happen to know that back there, what they were doing was just sending this called their brand awareness campaign. And they were sending people to their website. Their goal wasn't even to get leads, but just not all ads are kind of have the same goal, right? And so I'm just going to kind of go down here and I'm going to fix these things. Just really, this report is fine right now. We have all of the good information, but I just want to make it a little bit better. And kind of like oftentimes when you guys are making these data studio reports, it's not so much messing with the data is all kind of there. The little bit of the finer skills is just kind of like how to make these look good. And then kind of the skill beyond that is not only knowing how to make it look good, but kind of like knowing what to show to the people so that it's things that actually matter to their own business. That's why I wanted to give you this example of, hey, we have to kind of what I thought the template was built for. It wasn't really the actual case of the business objective. Anyways, I'm kind of skipping around. I'm going to go back up here. So I want to find out of their 500 spend where it actually went to. And so I don't want to look at cost per new message. I want to look at this one, cost per on Facebook leads, which is kind of a mouthful, but on Facebook leads. And something else I want to bring up on this specific metric is it has this thing called a filter. And it's only showing, this is only showing us cost from that one, from ads on Facebook. And what I mean is like, let's go look at this one for Instagram. And so let's change it from cost per new message to cost per on Facebook lead. Oh, also, we just got a really, really good question. And it says, how do you know what to show? So it's like, how do I broke this down instead of 700. I'm only showing like the top 6. In my opinion, this is just kind of the 6 you need to know. So to answer the question of how do you know what to show, it's sort of experience, but like one of the reasons I created this template is basically just start with these 6. The number one most important thing you always have to show is spend. And then the second most important thing you want to show is the actual goal of whatever that person who's spending the money, like what do they care about? And so I always have spend, try to get conversions, and then clicks. This is really interesting. And I'm running a little bit behind, but basically now that we go down to these tables, we can see, okay, these guys have 5 different ads. They spent $100 on one, $250 on one, 10. And then the kind of idea is, okay, what actually is like the best of all ads? Which ones were the best? And so we can see, okay, 23 cents per click, also 270 per click. That might, some people might be thinking like right now, why, what, okay, is it 29 cents a click or is it 270 per click? And unique outbound clicks, this is something I'm probably gonna, I would definitely rename. And I'm gonna do this here in a second. But basically an outbound click is a click to your website, where a total click is just a click to somewhere else on Facebook. And so one of the big things is most of the clicks these guys had were not to their website, but it was rather just back to their Facebook page. And then, oh, it says messaging conversations, cost per new message. Obviously, these are the 2 things we want to change. And so I'm going to go through and change that. Since I'm running a little bit late, I'm just want to skip that and get on to this next part. But it's best performing audience. And so this is interesting. It's like I kind of just know a little bit of the details about this one. And they actually just have one audience. And then like each ad kind of lines up to one audience. And I want to show you guys this, the cost per new lead. Sorry, I'm just running a little bit late. I kind of, anyways, changing cost per new messaging conversations. I want this to be on Facebook leads. Or wait, what was that? You have to spell this exactly right. And I think I missed the, there we go. On Facebook leads. And then the second one is I'm going to have the cost of each one of these leads. And kind of, I just want to go back to that last question of how do I know what to show, like why show this stuff? And it's basically just kind of different ways to measure success. And so if you were to look at this and say, okay, what was the best audience? You could say, oh, well, audience 2, that got 58 leads, so it could be the best. But they actually spent the most in amount spent. And so kind of how I really ultimately at the end of the day like to measure success is this cost per lead or cost per conversion. And so what I think the best ad would actually be this audience 3, where it was kind of $3 a lead instead of 4 or 6. And so it's good to be able to know that, but then more often than not, it's like, keep in mind, this was $4 per lead, but in this topic was called the new ad set. This is probably they were just sort of experiencing. They spent $170 and didn't even get one single lead. And so it's really interesting when you go back and look into these things, because I would say these 3 audiences were all pretty similar at the end of the day. It's a pretty good deal. But then they had 2 of these audiences that just got nothing. And so, one of the themes is kind of like, okay, spend less here, spend less there. Basically, me just showing these guys the report today, they said, oh, okay, we're just not ever going to do this 2 audiences anymore. We're only just going to spend our money on the cost per lead or on this audiences that bring us the money. And I'm going to go back and change this last one so I can kind of fully get through. You guys were over time for the webinar today. And so I'm just going to kind of go like 3 or 4 more minutes and then close. But please, if anyone has any questions, this would be a good time. And just specifically, like even if it has nothing to do with Facebook ads or Data Studio, if you have any questions at all when it comes to online marketing, this would be a good time. And what were the audiences they had for reference? Okay, this is a good question. So they said, how do they actually, like, what were the specific audiences that these guys did? And you can just tell it's right now it's called audience 1, audience 2, audience 3. Sort of one of the, I'm not going to be able to give a full answer to this question because in my opinion, the audience is like the number one most important factor for success. And so I'll just give you like a little quick overview of how I set up audience, just because I told these guys I wouldn't kind of give away their secret. But like just an example of the cafe, they really can only work with people that are in the Omaha area. So the first thing they did is just say, hey, we want our audience to be only people in like a 20-mile range. And then they also we want to, like, Facebook has a lot of different types of different ways you can kind of break down your audience. For example, it could be only women, or it could be like only men, or it could be people that are interested in specific things. Or Facebook used to have people that were like Democrats or Republicans. They actually have got rid of that one because I got in a little trouble. And with the whole, I just want to kind of end with this, but in the same way that these ads can get targeted to people on Facebook, the whole like news is starting to get targeted to people on Facebook also. And so if you can figure out a good audience that works and that is actually interested in your message, what I'm getting at is all the principles of how to kind of go through and see which of your best ads worked, who like your ads, who are the audiences for your ads. You can also see kind of like who was the audiences of your news report and like kind of which news gets the most clicks and most interactions, which is sort of weird. But okay, guys, so I'm gonna cut this a little bit short. I still haven't renamed my last two things, but kind of like the only thing I would need to do left on this is change cost per lead. In fact, I'll give you a little, one of the things I want to do is just change this so it doesn't overflow. And earlier I showed you how to do it so we can change all the numbers at once. But just another little tip is you can, any single number, you can kind of rename it. And so what I could have done is done cost per Facebook lead. Whoops, I don't like how that's spelled. And what I did there is I kind of just like gave that single metric a nickname, but it didn't change everything else. And so I'll just do one more and then I'm gonna log off. But so we had total clicks and then unique outbound clicks. That's much more. But I've got a new question. It says, how do you go about making an ad? Also, does Facebook have the ability to have the ad on Facebook and Instagram? Okay, this is a great place to kind of end. So yes, if you're advertising on Facebook, your ad is probably also gonna show up on Instagram, whether you want it to or not. You can choose to not. And then how to actually set up the ads. This is a great question. I would have totally forgot to say this, but it's called Facebook Ads Manager. And Facebook, it's kind of tricky to get to this page within Facebook. So I always Google it. And what you want to do is find this one, Facebook Ads Manager. Click on it. It's going to have you create an account, enter your credit card. It's pretty easy to make these ads. The one thing I want to say to you guys is, in my opinion, the part that everyone kind of overlooks is the audience, right? And so the better you can get with your audiences, the better your ads are going to do. And then the other mistake I talked about is a lot of people don't have their conversions set up right. And that's its whole other like webinar, but just kind of, I'm almost like to give the advice to begin with the end in mind, meaning like, even before you create your ad, just think about how you want your report to look. And is your goal going to be leads, or is it going to be more clicks? Is it going to be more outbound clicks? If your end goal is like to sell something online, your conversion is going to be kind of online sales. To do that, you want to get Facebook talking with your website. And again, that's this whole other thing. But my advice would just be kind of, at least I can get you guys point in the right direction of when you do create your ads, yes, you can do Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, even too. Facebook owns WhatsApp. And then just kind of think about what is my actual end goal for this ad, and make sure you're tracking that initially. It's going to be hard, but basically so many people create their ads and look back and have no idea what works. And the better you can get this stuff set up in the beginning, the better these reports are going to be, the more clear it's going to be on what works. The more clear you are on what works, the more money you're going to make. Cool. Thank you for your time. Yeah, you guys, I'm running a little bit late, so thank you guys so much for asking the question. Specifically this person, I can't pronounce your name. I don't want to say it wrong, but oh, hey, sorry, I just noticed there were two more questions. Is Google Data Studio a paid app? No, Google Data Studio is absolutely free. And then can you use an API to transfer the Facebook ads into Data Studio? Yeah, that's kind of what we did. In order to do that, you have to use a program called Supermetrics. Marla says, thank you, Chris. Hey, thank you, guys. I think we might be doing some more Data Studio classes. I'm going to talk to Ali and Ali at DoSpace, but keep posted. Thank you, guys. Stay safe, everyone. Anyone in Omaha, the Creighton Blue Jays are playing tonight, our basketball team. So wish them well. Ali, do you have anything you want to put in?
No, we are all good. So thank you for everybody who joined us tonight. And thank you, Chris.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, stay safe, everyone.
Have a good night.
All right.